I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor to defend his cause. Maintain the honors of his word, the glory of his cross.
Hello, I'm James Brown, and on behalf of the Eastern Church of Christ located in Toronto, Canada, I'd like to welcome you to today's edition of Walking Through the Bible, a podcast where we seek to study the Bible and the Bible alone. Please stick around afterwards for information on how you can contact us. But for now, please go to the book of Matthew, and we'll turn you over to Jeremy Dieselkamp for our study of the day.
Thank you, James, and welcome to all of our viewers. This is the second lesson in our study of Matthew. Yesterday, we studied about the introduction to the New Testament. If you missed that episode, you can find it and all of our other podcasts on multiple platforms by going to one of the different sites listed below. Having completed our introduction to the New Testament yesterday, let's now discuss the introduction of our second book of study, the book of Matthew. Matthew is, of course, the first book of the New Testament. The first 4 books of the New Testament are sometimes called the Gospels. The Greek word evangelion is translated as gospel and means good tidings or good news. The Gospels are the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are what are sometimes called synoptic Gospels because they take a common view of the life of Christ, while John's Gospel focuses on the sayings of Jesus and some of the events not found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The title of the book of Matthew designates who the author of the book is. In the book itself, Matthew is referred to by his other name, which is Levi, and is identified as the son of Alphaeus, an apostle of Jesus Christ, and a tax collector. People often ask, how do we know that Matthew is the author of this book? Because the book itself does not identify him as such. And while this is true, there is plenty of internal evidence which points to Matthew as the author. Matthew uses 9 different words for money, including 3 of which aren't found anywhere else in Scripture, pointing to us someone who worked with money. In Matthew 17:24-27, the writer includes the only account of Jesus paying the temple tax, again showing us the importance the writer placed on taxes. Now, I don't know about you, but the only people who get that excited about taxes are tax collectors, again pointing to the fact that the writer was a tax collector. Add that to the fact that early Christians not only quoted Matthew, but referred to it as Matthew, and we can have confidence that Matthew was the author. As for the date of writing, that is not entirely certain. As an apostle of Jesus Christ, Matthew would have been a direct eyewitness to many of the events that he records, with the exception of the early life of Jesus. However, with God inspiring Matthew, we can trust the accuracy of the chapters that Matthew didn't directly see. Now, even though we don't have knowledge of the date, we do have some hints. Matthew used the phrase "unto this day" twice in the book, in Matthew 27, verse 8, and Matthew 28, verse 15. This would tell us that there would have been some passage of time between the events of the life of Jesus and the writings of this book. However, Matthew's account in Matthew 24 of the prophecy concerning the destruction of Jerusalem is not in the past tense, nor is any indication given that this prophecy has been fulfilled yet. As we're going to see when we study Matthew, he time and time again points out prophecies that were fulfilled, so to not say so in Matthew 24 would indicate that the destruction of Jerusalem hadn't yet occurred. Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD, so that sets the upper limit to the date. As such, it is reasonable to conclude that Matthew was written sometime between 50 AD and 69 AD, with a date closer to 50 AD being more likely. The last thing we'll consider in our introduction is what the reason was that Matthew wrote this book in the first place. For starters, early Christians would have needed a detailed account of the life of Jesus before all the eyewitnesses had died off, so that the gospel of Jesus Christ could not be corrupted and people led away from God. The first 4 chapters of this book deal with the early life of Jesus before he began his full ministry. Matthew gives us a record of Jesus' birth, his escape from Herod, his baptism by John, and his temptations of the devil. Matthew also gives us many of the sermons of Jesus, with the most famous being the Sermon on the Mount, contained in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. But his main focus in the book is to try and show Jewish audiences that the Old Testament prophecies concerning the Messiah are literally fulfilled in the person of Jesus Christ. That is not to say that the audience of the book is only Jewish, but his inclusion of the genealogies of Jesus in chapter 1 and his pointing out the fulfillment of prophecy shows us his desire to convince the Jews to become Christians. From a doctrinal standpoint, Matthew also writes his book to teach us that Jesus is the King of the people of God. He points this out to us in chapter 21 by describing Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. In that account, Jesus is referred to as King. Even while providing an account of Jesus' crucifixion in Matthew 27, verse 37, Matthew notes the sign over Jesus reading, King of the Jews. So while Matthew probably had many reasons for writing his book, these are some of the main ones. With that, our time is up for today. Please join us, the Lord willing, tomorrow when we will continue our study of Matthew, beginning with Matthew 1, verse 1.
Thank you, Jeremy. And to our viewers, we also thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Should you have a question or comment, please leave it below or email it to answerintheword@gmail.com. We'll try to respond to you as quickly as we can. We hope you'll join us, Lord's willing, tomorrow when we will be continuing on our study in the book of Matthew. Goodbye for now and have a great day.
I'm not ashamed to own my Lord.